Hey guys, what's going on? Um, yeah, stunning news coming out of the wrestling world yesterday. Brandi Rhodes and Cody Reynolds, aka Cody Rhodes, and Brandi Reynolds, aka Brandi Rhodes, have announced that they are leaving the company that they helped found, that they helped build with their own hands. They are now leaving AEW. And people are saying that maybe it's possible that they will return to the WWE. This is stunning. This is stunning because, like I said, it was Cody Rhodes' exit from the WWE in 2015 that were the events that led up to first All In 2019, and then you know uh, later on in the year the founding of AEW. He went to Japan. He went to Ring of Honor. He did his thing on the Indies and became the American Nightmare. And it was because of him that Tony Khan and Shad Khan decided to get in the game. He and the Young Bucks and Marty Scurll, that group on that being the elite group that precipitated the founding of AEW. The way he was treated in the WWE, particularly after, well, even before his father passed away, with the Stardust gimmick and never giving he and his brother Dustin a WrestleMania match like they promised them at, at WrestleMania 32. They were supposed to be in WrestleMania 32. They weren't. So after that, Cody was let go. He asked for his release and he went to Japan. He went to Ring of Honor. And he, Kenny Omega, Marty Scurll, and the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson, lit it up. And it was him who made the bet with Dave Meltzer that Ring of Honor could not do a sellout in Madison Square Garden. And then later in 2019, that's exactly what they did. And that was technically that was the first pre AEW show. Now, because of this fallout with the Young Bucks apparently in the back, Cody Rhodes decides he's going to go back to the WWE. Strange events. The man whose exit from the WWE is responsible for the creation of AEW is now leaving AEW. I mean, that is weird. You know what I mean? That is like Vern Gagne leaving the AWA to go back to the NWA. It was Vern Gagne who started the AWA. They didn't want to put the NWA championship on him, so he started his own promotion, the AWA, in 1960. That's like Vince McMahon leaving uh, the WWF, or like Shane McMahon getting fired. So before the Royal Rumble, we thought we had it all figured out on both sides. Shane McMahon, of course, being with the WWE, and Cody Rhodes being with AEW. But now Cody Rhodes is going back to the WWE, and Shane McMahon, the son of Vince McMahon, is no longer with the WWE, and maybe will get a contract with AEW. Could you could you imagine Shane McMahon showing up on AEW and Cody Rhodes showing up on the WWE? The former the former boss of AEW showing up on the WWE, and the former boss of the son of the boss of the WWE showing up on AEW. You know what I mean? That's some forbidden door shit for that's some real forbidden door shit. Like, that's some real forbidden door. I mean, that is crazy, guys, to think about. These last 2 weeks in a world of professional wrestling. And on top of that, um, there's rumors that Stone Cold Steve Austin, the toughest son bitch in the history of the WWF/WWE, is returning to the WWE, is returning to in-ring action, is returning to face Kevin Owens at WrestleMania 38 in AT&T Stadium. So Cody Rhodes leaving AEW, Shane McMahon getting fired from the WWE, and Stone Cold Steve Austin returning to in-ring action. Three things that us as wrestling fans never thought we'd see. I never thought we would see Cody Rhodes back in the WWE. I never thought we would see a possibility that a McMahon would get fired from the WWF and slash WWE. And I never thought, especially after his last match, that we would ever see Stone Cold Steve Austin back in a wrestling ring in any company. So big things are happening. Bigger things than Impact Wrestling, appearing a member of Impact Wrestling, Mickie James, coming back. Yeah, she came back to the Royal Rumble, but so what? She's not a big name. Impact Wrestling is not a big organization. They work with both the WWE and AEW. You know what I mean? But this news. Now, what I think is going to happen, unfortunately, with Cody coming back, I think Vince McMahon, Vince McMahon is petty. You know what I mean? Vince is very petty. When he gets you back, he will punish your ass most of the time. When Jeff Jarrett came back in 2019, he didn't punish Jeff. You know what I mean? He put Jeff in some prominent positions in the back, and even Jeff Jarrett and Elias had some feud. So he didn't punish Kurt Angle when Kurt Angle came back in 2018. But those guys came back as Hall of Famers to sell DVDs, to sell Peacock and network subscriptions. So that was something different. You know what I mean? They had Hall of Fame careers. Cody Rhodes don't have a Hall of Fame career. Cody Rhodes, if anything, he was bullied and he was treated really shitty in the WWE, not just with the Stardust gimmick, right? But even before that, when he was in Legacy, the DX, Shawn Michaels, and Triple H beat him up a lot. Big Show beat him up at a WrestleMania. The best thing he ever did was him and Damian Sandow teamed up as the Rhodes Scholars. You know what I mean? So, but man, that shocked me. You know what I mean? Like, hearing that news shocked me. But what about him versus Stone Cold? You know what I mean? I just want to see what they're going to have him do. People are saying, well, he's going to be the 24/7 champion. I don't know. It's really weird. And it's interesting how 2022 is shaping up to kind of parallel 2002. And I have 2002, Dustin Rhodes, aka Goldust, returned to the WWE. A lot of people returned and stuff. A lot of people returned, just like at this Royal Rumble, Ronda Rousey came back. But Stone Cold Steve Austin's return to the WWE is going to be bigger than Ronda Rousey's, just like Hulk Hogan's return to the WWE was bigger than Triple H's. You know, so 2022 was kind of paralleling 2002 with all these returns, with all these comebacks, even the one that we all thought was unthinkable, the biggest star from the previous generation. In 2002, that was Hulk Hogan. Because Hulk Hogan was so instrumental in building the brand of WCW, we thought we'd never see him come back to the WWE. Just like with Stone Cold Steve Austin, we never thought we'd see him come back to the WWE because he was so instrumental in the Attitude Era. But here he is. Here are these rumors that he will come back. And he's been on the show. He's appeared a lot of times. Him, McFoley, and Shawn Michaels. They beat up the New Day in 2016. Last time they were at AT&T Stadium. He's been there, but he's never been in the ring. People wanted him versus Brock Lesnar one year. I think it was 2016. They wanted him and Brock Lesnar, the match they never had because he walked out of the company in '02. But we're not getting him and Brock Lesnar. I'll settle for Kevin Owens. You know, I grew up a Stone Cold Steve Austin mark. Besides the NWO and Crow Sting in the late '90s, Stone Cold Steve Austin was my dude. You know what I mean? Austin 316 says, I just whooped your ass. I watched that King of the Ring in '96. I watched him ascend to those heights. And even before that, when he was in WCW and he had that series with Ricky Steamboat, those Clash of Champions in '94, I, I was watching it with my stepdad, and I was like, man, stunning Steve Austin. He was stunning Steve Austin at that time. And I said he's gonna be a huge star. I didn't know. I was like Ted DiBiase. Right? I didn't know how big he was gonna be, but I knew that he was going to be a major star, and he became the biggest star in wrestling ever. You know what I mean? Just associated with wrestling, not like Hulk Hogan and The Rock. You know, they're more associated with movies, but purely wrestling is him and Ric Flair. You know, so Cody Rhodes coming back, Stone Cold Steve Austin coming back. Shit, what is WrestleMania 38 gonna look like? You know what I mean? And what's this mean for AEW? You know, no more Cody. I heard that the reason that Cody left, the Cody left AEW, because remember, Cody had made a thing, both kayfabe in storyline and in real life, that he was never going to win the AEW championship. But since Hangman Page now has the belt, since he's the AEW champion, you know, ratings have dropped significantly in AEW. Like, I think they wanted to make Cody like his role in AEW kind of be like his dad's role in uh, in Jim Crockett Promotions in the NWA, where he was the main babyface. But uh, and then later Sting took on that role. Sting was always the main babyface in WCW NWA. Even when Dusty came back in '91, he didn't he wasn't ever really featured in main events. And I think that's what they wanted to do with Cody. You know what I mean? They wanted to have Cody be the resident babyface, but what sense does that make if he never has the AEW championship? You know, you have Hangman Page with it, or talks about maybe putting it on Eddie Kingston, maybe putting it on Adam Cole, maybe putting it on, back on Kenny Omega. But Cody has that notoriety from the WWE. Cody has that notoriety of being a Rhodes. He's related to Goldust. He's related to his father, Dusty. You know what I mean? Two legends in the world of professional wrestling. You know what I mean? So why not put the belt back on him. That was a stupid stipulation. And it's professional wrestling. It's wrestling. You don't have to stick to these stipulations. You know what I mean? You can go back on these stipulations. I mean, Macho Man was retired at WrestleMania 7, yet a year later, Macho Man was winning the WWF Championship against Ric Flair. Ric Flair was retired at Halloween Havoc 1994, yet a year later, he was um, he was WCW champion by beating Macho Man. You know, Shawn Michaels uh, was retired by The Undertaker at WrestleMania 26 in 2010. That yet 8 years later, he was wrestling. Him and Triple H were wrestling The Undertaker and Kane in Saudi Arabia. Um, Ric Flair was retired by Shawn Michaels in 2008. Yet 2 years later, he was back on TV in TNA in the big TNA Monday Night Wars thing they did, where they tried to introduce the NWO, Jeff Hardy, Rob Van Dam to go against Bret Hart's return. So you never say never in the world of professional wrestling because people always go back on stipulations, especially kayfabe stipulations. Hell, was Royal Rumble 2000 Mick Foley's last match? No, he was back at it a couple months later at that year's WrestleMania. It's wrestling. They always go back on stipulations. Like with Luger, he was only supposed to have one championship match against Yokozuna. He went back at that year's WrestleMania and he had another championship match. I mean, whoever sticks to stipulations in wrestling, you know what I mean? Nobody. Nobody. Stipulations like, oh, they've retired or they'll never have another championship. Those aren't stuck to. You know, we all know that for the sake of storylines, you know, people go back on shit. Anyway, there's an Elimination Chamber coming up in a couple of weeks that's going to feature Roman Reigns and Goldberg for the Universal Championship. Whatever, it's the match that was supposed to be at WrestleMania 26, and it didn't happen. You know, I don't like Goldberg. I mean, I like Goldberg in 1998, but this is not 1998. This is 2022. Why is this guy still wrestling and winning championships? But whatever, they need the ratings. They like again, wrestling was ahead of the curve, just like wrestling was ahead of the curve with the use of the internet, with spoilers, and the IWC developed before other internet fandom communities developed in movies and music, just like they were ahead of the curve with streaming, with the WWE Network developing um, before Netflix really got into streaming, before Amazon really got into streaming, and before the launch of Disney Plus. You know, they were ahead of the curve in terms of tentpoling these, using these established brands. Movies does it now. TV do it now. They appeal to nostalgia. They appeal to older fans, especially millennials. We've seen music doing it now with the Super Bowl. Wrestling was doing that years before. They were bringing back these old names and these old brands and relying on nostalgia. Hell, that's basically how Eric Bischoff built WCW. He brought in all of Hogan and all of Hogan's friends, Big Boss Man, John Tenta, all these guys, and Kamala, you know, the whole Dungeon of Doom. You had Brutus Beefcake, you had Kamala, you had all these guys that Hulk Hogan had already wrestled in the WWF, bringing them back to wrestle Hulk Hogan again in the late 90s. So the use of older wrestlers is something that wrestling has always done, even on an indie level. Indies always brought back Tito Santana and Jimmy Snuka and the Iron Sheik. So they're doing it now on a mainstream level, bringing back these old talents. Wrestling was ahead of the curve, guys, more than other aspects of pop culture. So another guy they're bringing back is Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes to the to WWE. Maybe they'll just have him job the hell out. You know, they'll feed him to Goldberg. Peace. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the bell button. We'll see what's going to happen in the next coming months with AEW, and we'll see what's going to happen in the next coming months with Cody going to WWE and maybe Shane McMahon coming to AEW. Peace.